Hey, thank you so much for joining us at our Crosspoint Church podcast. Now, if you're new to our podcast or maybe new to our church in general, we're just a bunch of messed up people who don't have it all together, running after a heavenly leader who loves us and meets us right where we are. We hope this message encourages you, builds your faith, and strengthens your confidence as you continue down this journey of what it means to know and follow Jesus. Enjoy this message.
Oh, man, was that not fun right there? Hey, let's make some noise for our play mob right there. So fun. You know, I think God was really smiling in that moment. I really do, because I think when he sees his children playing, it brings him great joy. And so we're going to talk about that, what that has to do with burnout. So welcome to Crosspoint. If you're here for the first time, my name's Curt. Really, really excited to have you with us this weekend. And we got a whole bunch of people online, spring breaking. Let's make some noise for those joining us in the online spaces this weekend. Whether you're coming from your dorm room or the beach somewhere, bar, maybe a coffee shop, excited to have you with us this weekend. Now, we're in week 4 of the series called Thank God It's Monday, and we're taking a look at God's perspective for our work. And this is fascinating because our relationship with God actually coincides with what we do in our workspaces, and God really created us to thrive and to flourish. And so if you missed any of the previous 3 weekends, man, I really encourage you to go back, check them out. They are at our watch page, and you can find them there. As long as you're paying your internet bill and we're paying ours, they will be there forever. And so you can check them out, and it just kind of pieces together God's design for our work lives. And we're going to be wrapping this up next weekend, so I encourage you, if you're going to be traveling, spring breaking, pick where you're going to connect next weekend, whether that's in person on Thursday, Sunday, or joining us in our online service. So I hope as you've gone back to work each of the last Mondays, you've had a little extra with you. That's really been one of our goals, is that you get there and people are like, oh my gosh, what's going on with you? You're kind of bringing it right now. Or if you're a student, academically, perhaps your friends are like, dude, you're like really bringing it in class. And so this is what happens when we begin to see that these are environments where we're made to flourish in. Now, this is easier for some of us than for others. And if I'm really, really, honest, it's been a difficult work environment for the last few years, right? If you're in the workspaces, it's been tough. There's been a lot of, complications. It seems like work is just harder. In fact, a couple years ago, we went through the whole Great Resignation, where 4 million people per month over a course of a year, 48 million people over the year just resigned from their jobs. Some people left one job, went to another. Other people just quit, work altogether. And so, just a lot of churning going on right there. And I think, we're seeing some of these trends right now. In fact, in a recent article, I saw that, right now there's a sense of uncertainty looming again for employers and even for employees. So we know how this goes. When somebody leaves their job, that means those that are left have to pick up the extra slack, so it's more work. And then, hiring is difficult. I know for me, that's one of the hardest things I do in my role is hiring. And then once you do hire, you got to on-ramp and you got to train people. And so again, more and more work. And I think, one of the reasons that perhaps people are, that were surveyed said, hey, work is just hard is this one word, and we've all said it, it's burnout. In fact, in a recent Forbes study, they said 66% of Americans right now are feeling burnout, right here in March 2025. And not only are 66% of Americans feeling this, it's even an increase in the younger generations. In fact, 18 to 24-year-olds, 81% of them are feeling this. 83% in terms of 25 to 34 years old. And so burnout's a real thing, and yet it's not just like, hey, I'm tired, I'd like a little bit of a break. It goes way deeper than that, in fact. In fact, Forbes asked the question, what's causing the burnout? Here's what the survey said. 24% of respondents said that they're burned out because they have more work to complete than the time to do it. Maybe you can relate to that. Others said, hey, I don't have the resources or the right tools. 20% said the poor economy is just impacting my well-being. And I just think that's a growing concern. I think there's a lot of things. We're seeing a lot of despair right now, a lot of things going on behind the operating system of our lives. 19% said, I'm just taking on too much work because there's labor shortages. We don't have enough people to get the work done. And so in those moments, what do? When we feel burned out, our first reaction is, well, I need a new work environment, right? So I'm going to change jobs. And that might be part of the answer, honestly. For some of us, I know that if you're in a job that you're just not wired for, like what you have to do is not, wired, your skill set doesn't align with that, you may need to change jobs. In fact, this is one of the reasons we're providing this Discover Your Strengths workshop here in a couple weeks, because understanding how you're hardwired, the unique things that God has hardwired into you, man, it's a game changer when it comes to aligning in places where you experience joy and fulfillment. In fact, for me, a few years ago, when I went through this workshop, I discovered the things I really love to do. And it was shortly after that, I was actually meeting with my therapist, and I was struggling with just not finding a lot of contentment in work. And he said, hey, I want you to make a list of the things you want to do and the things you don't want to do. And then I want you to tell your boss about it. And I said, well, I don't know how to do it. Like, how do I go to my board and be like, well, hey, here's what I want to do and here's what I don't want to do? Like, they're going to be like, okay, sorry. Like, somebody has to do the work. But it was a really good exercise for me in the sense of, understanding that when I'm not finding contentment, that perhaps is because I'm covering areas that just don't fall into my strengths. But the places where my strengths align is where, man, that's where you get the best of Curt Walters right there. And so if you're looking to find some of that alignment, I encourage you to check out the Discover Your Strengths workshop. Now, I think for a lot of us, though, when we think about the answer to burnout, we say, well, I just got to go somewhere else. I got to get another job. And, and a lot of times that may not solve the problem. In fact, that's really what I want us to talk about today, because there's perhaps another thing we need to look at. Meaning, rather than I just thinking, okay, if I'm not enjoying my job, if I'm feeling burned out, I need to find a new group of people, new employer. That might make it a little better. But see, here's the reality. You know what goes with you when you go to that new job? You. And so perhaps there's some things going on internally with us that actually is creating some of that dissatisfaction. And so when you show up there, guess what? You're going to be there too. And so the answer may be more in line with saying, okay, what does it look like for me to manage myself better? Meaning, what does it look like for me to perhaps embrace some healthier rhythms that allow me to really flourish and enjoy not just my work life, but all of life? Because you're going to take those patterns that you have into whatever job and wherever that job is. So we're going to look at this week, and I want to start by looking at something the Apostle Paul says in the New Testament. And he says this in this letter he writes to Timothy, who's kind of a protege or someone he's mentoring. And he says this two different times, but I want to read you what he says in his first letter to this younger guy named Timothy. He says, hey, Timothy, I want you to pay close attention to your life and to your teaching. When he says to your life, he's talking your vocation, whatever it is that you're doing, that the thing that you're spending your daytime hours doing. And to your teaching. He says the things, because Timothy was a teacher. And then he goes on, he says, persevere in these things, for by doing so, look at this, you will save both yourself. You'll actually do something for yourself, and you're going to do something for others, for those who are hearing or sitting under your teaching. So he says, hey, pay attention to your job. That's great. Like, that's totally cool. But man, you really need to pay attention to what's going on in the deeper places of your soul. And so like Timothy, like Paul's encouraging Timothy, what does it look like to manage ourselves better? So I want to talk about that this weekend. And this is interesting because Paul right here, he doesn't say, hey, it's everybody else's responsibility to do that for you. In fact, this is a big tension in our workplaces right now. There's a lot of employers that are wrestling through, employees that are going, man, it's your job, boss, to make sure I'm happy. It's your job to make sure I'm content in my job. And one of the things we have to realize and kind of have to own is we have agency. We actually have the ability to affect, our level of joy, our level of contentment. Like, that's something we have to own. And so, a lot of times when we think about this, we start thinking about this whole idea of work-life balance, right? Like, we're like, man, I just want a balanced life. And so, it's kind of like this balance beam. I can get up on this balance beam and you're going to notice I never took gymnastics as a kid, but we want balance, right? And balance is hard, especially when it comes to life and work and in our jobs. In fact, it's nearly impossible. And so, have you ever been on balance beam and you're like, man, I wish I could be like Simone Biles. I wish I could just do like a back spring, handspring off. I know I'm only 2 inches off the ground, And that could actually make Crosspoint go viral, all right? That really could take us viral. I'll give you one little trick. I got a bad knee, so I can't do much on here, but how about this right here? How about that? Yeah, that's about all you're going to get out of me. Yeah, I know. Here's the thing, though. We want to create a balanced life. I want to balance my work life, my home life. All of us, we for whatever reason, we long for this. I want to balance my volunteering, my kids' activities. And what happens is we end up feeling guilty about all of it. We go to work and we feel guilty because we're not home. And then we're at home and we feel guilty because we're not working more. And anybody else ever felt this way before? You ever felt like that guilt before? Yeah. It's because it's impossible. And see, here's the thing. God never tells us, hey, be balanced. Like that God, you never hear that from God. In fact, all throughout the scripture, Old Testament, New Testament alike, we actually get pictures that life is going to be imbalanced at times. There's going to be seasons that are seasons of work. There's going to be seasons that are seasons of play. There's going to be, seasons for this. There's going to be seasons for that. But it's never really going to be balanced. And so the way to keep a healthy life and a life that's flourishing is to develop these healthy rhythms that keep us in the game, where we have more joy and more meaning and more flourishing. So we're going to talk about these this weekend because this is what we're created for. In fact, there's 3 different kind of rhythms that we can think, kind of the lenses we can look through. The first is there's certain daily rhythms that we can look at and we can learn from Scripture on. The second one is weekly rhythms. We're going to look at what weekly rhythms we can do to actually continue to refresh and rejuvenate. And then there's actually yearly rhythms. There's actually this idea of yearly rhythms. Not going to really dig into that, but what I will say is America is number 1 in the world on leaving PTO on the table. We for whatever reason, we don't use all of our paid time off, and it's almost like we wear that as a badge of honor. I only took 1 week of vacation this year. And so we actually can learn something about the rhythms that keep us refreshed. So to do this, we're going to go all the way back to Genesis, which is where we started at the beginning of this series, trying to understand God's story of work and his design for this. And so if we go back to Genesis 1 and 2, we actually see that this is where God is creating the world. And so he works for 6 days, right? First 3 days he's separating light from darkness, water from the dry land, the sky from the ground. And then the next 3 days he starts populating. He starts putting the fish in the streams, little crawly things. He starts, animals, fauna and flora, the lions, tigers, and bears. Man, yeah. He populates the earth. But if you notice, he doesn't keep working into the night. He actually has a pause. God has what's called a daily rhythm. Now, we don't know if it was a literal, 24-hour day like you and I have. God's economy is totally different. Could have been 1,000 years. Each day could have been 1,000 years. Each day could have been 1,000 seconds. But there comes a point where he bounds his day, where he actually stops working, not because the work is done, because we see that he gets up and he goes back at it the next day. But if you notice what he does, he gets to the end of each day and he looks at what he's done and he has some satisfaction. He says, it was good. Every day he creates, he said it was good. And he admires his work. And then on the 6th day, what he creates on the 6th day? He creates you and me. He creates human beings. And what does he say on the 6th day? Oops. No, he doesn't actually say that. Some of us think that's what he said. No, what he said? He said, no, actually, man, that's very good. You're very good. Just so you know, that's what God thinks about you. You're amazing. And then after this, after he's done creating, we actually see him begin to interact with the humans in the garden. They're working, they're cultivating, they're staring at somewhere. And it says at the end of each day, he walks with them in the cool of the night. Now, the cool of the night is the evening. So they work during the day, and then in the evenings, they connect, they commune, they hang out together. We don't fully know what that looks like, but he walks with them in the cool of the day. It means they're not working. And I point this out because I just think this is a really fascinating rhythm right here. It's part of the story of the work-rest rhythm, which I think all of us have to think about daily because, we're always tethered, right? Technology is always, an arm away unless we lose our cell service, right? We used to lose cell service, maybe that helps us. But the laptop, especially if you work at home, it's always in the next room. Oh, gosh, I could respond to that email. I could make sure that report gets out tonight so it's in their inbox tomorrow morning. And so we never really get these chunks of time where we allow our mind to rest. And so God models for the first humans. He actually gives us a rhythm of work and then replenishment. But even more significant, not only is this a daily rhythm, he models this in a weekly rhythm. And so for 6 days he creates, and then on the 7th day he does something absolutely surprising. Take a look at what it says. Genesis says, so the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. And on the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, and so he rested from his work. Now, I don't know about you, I find it easy to see God as a God who's creating. I mean, I don't fully know what that looked like, but I mean, I can picture God being like sun, stars, bam, like the moon, kapow. I mean, I could totally see like, here's bunnies and dogs, it's Easter, right? Like, pow. I don't know why we're doing superhero, sounds, but it just seemed fun. I'm sure there was some element of that. But, I have no problem with that. I totally can get that. But here's what I struggle with. I struggle with this picture. What does it look like when God rests? I mean, when God sits back and puts his feet up in the lazy boy for the night, I mean, I don't know what that looks like. Because, we read that God never slumbers or sleeps. I mean, he never gets depleted. I mean, he's always working. I mean, but he actually chooses in the midst of that to rest. And what that means is he actually takes his energy in another direction, away from vocation toward a vocation, toward recreation, toward something that isn't, accomplishing something. He takes his energy in a different direction. And it's important to remember, you and I are created in the image of God. We're divine image bearers. And so we're designed to do the same, but we need more rest than God does. And so in verse 3, again, he does something even more significant. It says, and God blessed the seventh day, which is at the end of his cycle, and he declared it holy because it was the day when he rested from all of his work in creation. And so the seventh day became known as the Sabbath day. All right, and this is the word Shabbat in Hebrew, and the word simply means to cease or to stop activity. All right, and then he does two things. It says that he blessed that day and that he makes it holy. All right, what does this mean? All right, what does this mean? Well, what does it mean to bless the day? Blessings is a big, big deal. We see this in the Old Testament, New Testament. It's really a big deal when there is a blessing. And so I want you to picture, this is what a blessing is. A blessing, just imagine all these amazing things being wrapped up into like one ball or one gift. Things like joy and fulfillment and purpose and connection and meaning, all these things coming together. That's a blessing right there. That's what a blessing is. That's what it means to live a blessed life. And so what does it mean when it says God blesses the day? Well, it says he blesses the seventh day. When he blesses something, it means he pours a little extra in. He pours more meaning, more significance and joy into it. Now, I don't know why he picked, Sunday. It's not like he has, he's partial against Tuesday. I mean, we have Taco Tuesdays. That's good, right? Like we got Wings Wednesday, like Thirsty Thursday, Fabulous Friday. I mean, he likes all the days. It's just that for whatever reason, the Sabbath day, he said, hey, I'm gonna put extra meaning in this for you. And then he does something else. He declares it holy. Now, what does that mean, holy? Now, if you grew up in church, especially legalistic church, then when you hear this, when you hear holy, you know what you think? You think no fun. That's what you think. You think no fun for you. In fact, our family, we just got a new puppy a couple months ago. We got a little 7-month-old little chocolate or a little black lab, and then we got an 11-year-old black lab. Her name's Minnie. The younger one's named Rory. I thought Minnie was pretty fun. I'm discovering Minnie's getting a little crotchety in her older age. And so now that we have Rory, I mean, she's 7 months of energy. Everything's a toy. I'll take my weekly home. She'll tear it up. I mean, I had my hands on it. She tears it up. It's on the floor. Everything she comes into is something to enjoy and play with. And we've discovered that Minnie, she's like the Nazi police, our older lab, man. Rory has too much fun. Minnie lets her have it. It's like the sheriff has come to town. All right, it's like no fun for you. Shut the fun down. And so I just think so many times when we hear this word holy, that's what we think about, right? We're like, oh man, that means no fun. But see, that's not at all what God was meaning right here. This word holy actually means to be set apart. It means to be set apart for a unique moment or a unique purpose. And so what God's saying is, hey, you're going to work. And then on the seventh day, we need to do something different. We need to set that day apart for refreshment so you can rest, so you can rejuvenate. He says, this is a unique day. It's a day to be set apart that's spent replenishing, not worrying about that to-do list. It's a day where you don't have to do things that drain you. You may have to do those the other 6 days of the week, but this is a day where you engage in what replenishes you. And see, we have to pay attention to this because, again, if you and I are created in God's image, we're made to work, but we're also made to rest and have a rhythm that replenishes. And see, when God set this rhythm in motion, it was way back in the Old Testament. In fact, he put it in this whole book of laws, and it's really his way of saying, hey, this is the way I designed the world and how I want you to live. And then he narrowed it down and put it in the 10 Commandments or the 10 Suggestions, as some people call them. And it was number 4. It's hey, honor the Sabbath, keep it holy, keep it set apart, not have no fun, but keep it set apart. And so all of a sudden what that looked like is people, when they got to sundown on Friday, then all of a sudden it was no work for the next 24 hours until sunday down on Saturday. So it was a 24-hour Sabbath. But the problem was you needed time to prepare for this. So Friday afternoon before you hit sundown, that was actually called the day of preparation. So you had to prepare to where you could actually spend time rejuvenating. And so a lot of times today, I think we hear this idea of Sabbath. We're I take a Sabbath, I take a day off. But a day off isn't really a Sabbath. It's just a day off, right? It's you still may be mowing the yard and doing things that drain you and all the crud that builds up at the house, cleaning and fixing stuff and that you just haven't had time to do during the week. But that's more the day of preparation. That's kind of the buffer day. So that's where they took care of all the stuff that kind of accumulated and, made their meals and, if that's work for you. And so then they started the Sabbath, and it always started with a special meal. And they'd spend it with their family or their close friends. And then every Friday evening, it was the kickoff after the end of a busy week. So everybody's oh man, we get to Sabbath and we get to enjoy this next 24 hours. It was partly worship, it was partly rejuvenation. It nurtured the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, the relational, and they would enjoy it. Then Jesus comes along. And he doesn't blow it off. He actually models it. The disciples actually model it. In fact, if you read the Gospels, it's kind of cool because this is where Jesus got in trouble a lot. He got in trouble with the religious police all the time, and they were everywhere. All right, and so Jesus, we see him get in trouble, and it usually had to do with the Sabbath. Because he had all these ideas you can do this, but you can't do that. And so, Jesus, he just liked kind of getting in front of the religious police and doing things that he knew was going to kind of tick them off. All right, he knew they were going to be we're blowing the whistle at you, Jesus. Can't do that on the Sabbath. You know this. And so one day, in fact, he was out with his guys. They were walking through a field. It was harvest time. And they'd been out walking all day. They're getting hungry. So they start pulling some kernels of wheat off the top of the stalks of wheat. And here come the religious police. And they're blowing their whistles Jesus, shame on you. You know you can't do this. And take a look at what Jesus says right here. He says, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. Now this is so crazy right here. Because this gives us a glimpse into God's heart right here. And his intention for the Sabbath. Meaning, he made this day for you. He didn't make this day so you could have a whole bunch of requirements to hit. He said, no, because see, we've made this so laborious at times. We're oh man, I gotta, it's no fun. I mean, if I'm gonna do holy things, it's no fun. God said, no, this is a gift for you. I want you to enjoy it. It's one of the reasons we did a play mob earlier. You guys enjoy the play mob in the room earlier? Man, I tell you what, it's so fun. The reason we do that, because I just think, so many times we come to church and we're church isn't fun. I think God smiles when his kids are having fun. I really do. And so many times church has become laborious and God's no, it's a gift for you. This is something you should enjoy. It should be time that's treasured and life-giving. Now, here's a little bonus story. You didn't pay for this one when you came in, by the way. Jesus, one of the things he got in trouble a lot, second after the Sabbath, was when he healed people. I don't know if you remember any of these stories, but, he'd heal somebody, and the Pharisees, the religious police had come in, and they're Jesus, shame on you. You can't heal this guy. You know that's against the law on the Sabbath. I mean, granted, he's been an invalid his whole life. He's laying there helpless, but, you got to just let him lay there. And I'm sure Jesus is whatever. And here's what's so cool about this. This, again, tells us something about God's character right here. Because, see, what we see is, healing was not work for Jesus. For some of you, you golf to rejuvenate yourself. Or you grow a garden, and for some that's work, but for many that's rejuvenating. You might like to hunt, or you might like to read, and you go, oh man, that just rejuvenates me. Well, for Jesus, he's I like to heal people. Think about it. That's pretty cool, right? That's Jesus right there. And then we had the early Christians who participated in this. They didn't blow it off. In fact, they changed the day to Sunday. They changed it from Saturday to Sunday because that was Resurrection Day, the day we celebrate here in a few weeks that Jesus rose from the grave on early Sunday morning. So they said, hey, that's a great day to make our Sabbath day, and that's the day we're going to, go to church and be able to rejuvenate ourselves, our whole person. And it's not like you have to go to church on Sunday. Like, here at Crosspoint, we got Thursday night service. In fact, we got 3 services across the board, and part of that is like, we accommodate people. It's not like we have to hit the requirement just on Sunday. It's like, no, if it helps to have a service early in the week so you can enjoy your weekend, then we're going to accommodate that. Because see, that's what God does. He accommodates to bring rejuvenation. And then, you get to like modern day and, we kind of blow the whole thing off, right? Like it's just not something that's that important anymore. Still in our culture, we're like, well, I have work days, I have off days. But that's about it. If we're honest, we don't really think of the Sabbath as a day to replenish and to rest. And listen, I've been there. Listen, I don't Sabbath great. I know some of you are like, well, why are you up here talking about it? Which is a good question. but no, I'm actually growing in this. I've actually learned a lot in this as I continue to find more and more joy in flourishing. There's a rhythm. And I'm telling you, when you don't do it, when we don't honor this, we shouldn't wonder why we have so much exhaustion, and we feel joyless, and we feel a sense of emptiness and lifelessness. In fact, I want to give you a couple tools on how to implement this, how to think about this, kind of a framework as you think about how do I increase the joy and the fulfillment in my life with times of rest and Sabbath. So I want to tell you about something called the entrepreneurial time system. This is so cool. I stumbled across this a number of years ago. I'm not like real systematic, so I don't like follow it to a T, but I'm telling you, when you begin to think about your life in this framework, it changes things. Now, this is based on research. So these researchers did all this research, and basically what they determined is, time management is like a really big deal. And there's 3 ways or 3 types of days when it comes to this entrepreneurial time system. So think of this as like 3 different buckets for your life. All right. And so the first day is what they call focus day. All right. And so focus day is basically the stuff that your company or wherever you work needs you to do the most of. All right. It's basically the reason you're there. All right, and so for me, I have 2 focus days a week. There's 2 days that I'm like, this is pretty much my main job, and I spend my time doing that on those 2 days. In fact, with my team oftentimes, as we go through realigning positions, I'll say, okay, what are the things that you're doing that other people could do that you could delegate so you could do the things that only you're wired to do because that's what we need out of you. So that's what you spend on your focus day. So that's day 1. The second type of day in this system is what's called buffer days. All right, and so these are the days where you handle administrative work. These are the days where you may not be doing your core focus stuff, all right, but this is the stuff that keeps the business going. It keeps the office going. It keeps the home front going. All right, these are the things that allow you to make sure your focus days are truly focused, and it makes sure your free days are truly free, which leads us to the third day, and this is the most important day. In all the data, this is the most important day, which is the free day. Now, the free day, this is the third type of bucket. This day is where you set aside a 24-hour period of time where you only do activities that are replenishing. In fact, they would even say, this corporate data right here, they would even say if you do like 10 seconds on an email on a free day, you just canceled the free day. You got to do another free day because that just put that day into a buffer day. You just did some administrative work. And so it doesn't apply anymore. And what's crazy is they did all this brain research, and I think it was through like beta waves, and they found that creativity doesn't actually happen in work mode. In fact, creativity happens in non-work mode. This is why when you're in the shower, not only do you sing amazing, but like you like have really good ideas, right? Like, or when you're working out, like when I'm on a run, man, I get some of my best ideas on a run. You know why? Because that's when we're most creative. It's not in our work time. And so you have to have a free day so it can actually foster creativity. And what's crazy about this isn't a Christian thing. This is actually a research thing. They did all this research to demonstrate that if they could just talk executives into 1 free day a week, everything in their life, their personal life, their relationships, and their company would actually be better. And what was crazy about this? I sat back and I go, oh my gosh, they could have saved all this money. Because that's just the way God designed us. It tells us right here, God says, this is the way I designed you to work. And listen, you don't have to be like super intense on it, but it's a thing. It's a thing. And if we don't want to feel constantly burnt out, and we want a deeper soul, and we want better relationships, it's really important to have this work rejuvenation rhythm. Now, for me, that's Fridays. Friday, Saturday are my 2 days. It's what sometimes Friday's my buffer day. Saturday's my Sabbath. Our rhythms here at Crosspoint, we work from Sunday to Thursday. I mean, most of our team, Sunday to Thursday. After Thursday night service, we prepare and then we take 2 days off. Now, some of our team, they have different days off because a production team has to work on Friday, Saturday, make sure our online service is ready to go. But I'm telling you, you text me on a Friday, you probably won't get a response. You're going to think I'm ghosting you because I don't have my phone out. I'm not even looking at my phone. It's a day where I disconnect from those things. All right, and so again, I'm growing in this. I'm really growing. I'm telling you, it makes a difference. And you can feel it when you're not doing it well. Now, I want to point you to another resource, one last resource. And this is a book. In fact, my wife recommended this book a few years ago. She said, Curt, you really need to read this. She's really emphatic. And I'm like, okay, she's really emphatic. I don't know why she thinks I need to read this. Well, I opened the book up, and as soon as I got into the first page, I'm like, oh, this is why she wanted me to read this, because I felt like I was reading back the story of my life. And so it's a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's by a young pastor by the name of Mark John Comer, and he writes a lot about the inner life. And I just want to read you an excerpt. This is the very start of the book, and perhaps you'll connect with it. If you don't connect with it, totally cool. If you connect with this, I encourage you to pick this book up. It has been a game changer for me. Here's what he writes. He says, home now, late dinner, can't sleep, that dead, tired, wired feeling, crack open a beer. I'm ending most nights this way on the couch long after the family's gone to bed. But the thing is, I feel like a ghost. I feel half alive, half dead, more numb than anything else, flat, one-dimensional. Emotionally, I live with an undercurrent of nonstop activity, nonstop anxiety that rarely goes away with a tinge of sadness. But mostly, I just feel a blah, spiritually empty. It's like my soul is hollow. My life is so fast, and I like fast. I'm type A. I'm driven. I'm a get crap done kind of guy. But we're past that now. I work 6 days a week, early to late, and it's still not enough to get it all done. Worse, I feel hurried, like I'm tearing through each day, so busy with life that I'm actually missing moments. And isn't that what life is? It's just a series of moments. I mean, anybody else? Am I the only one? Monday morning, I'm up early, in a hurry to get to the office, always in a hurry, another day of meetings. I freaking hate meetings. I'm introverted and creative. I get bored way too easily. Me in a meeting is a terrible idea for everybody involved. All right, is this the way of Jesus? Is this what he designed? In fact, speaking of Jesus, I have a terrifying thought lurking in the back of my mind, a nagging question of conscience that won't go away. Who am I becoming? I stop, breathe, envision my life at 40, at 50, at 60. It's not pretty. I see a man who's successful, but in all the wrong metrics. Church size, accomplishments, speaking invites, social stats. Despite all my talk about Jesus, I see a man who's emotionally unhealthy and spiritually shallow. I'm still in my marriage, but it's duty, not delight. I'm basically who I am today, but older and worse, stressed out, on edge, quick to snap at the people I love the most, unhappy, preaching about a way of life that sounds better than it actually is. Why am I in such a rush to become somebody I don't even like? And then it hits me like a freight train. In America, you can be a success as a pastor and a failure as an apprentice of Jesus. You can gain a church and yet lose your soul. I don't want this to be my life. Now, those are John Mark Comer's words. But that easily could have been a page right out of my journal. And so I really took this book to heart. In fact, if you connect with any of that, you can pick this up at any bookstore, Amazon. We've got some out at Connection Point. You can purchase it out there through a QR code or take it if you don't have the funds to purchase it. But I want to give you the picture of what he shares as the alternative, because I'm telling you, I began to implement some of this, and it's a game changer. And so he does the Jewish thing. He decided for he and his family, hey, Friday night, we're going to have a meal together. That's going to start our Sabbath. It's going to go for 24 hours till sundown Saturday. He's got little kids. So he's got to have, kind of that buffer day to get stuff ready to make sure their stuff's taken care of. He says his kids love this. He says, my kids actually like, Dad, is it Sabbath day? Is it Sabbath? They love Sabbath day. They get disappointed when they hear Sabbath day is 3 days away. They love the Sabbath. And so it kicks off with a meal for them on Friday night, and they sometimes invite family, sometimes friends, but here's what their next day, here's what their Saturday begins to look like. I want to read it to you. He says, we do sleep in. We relax, we spend time in the scriptures, we pray, we eat our way through the day. We enjoy nature, we go for a light hike, we spend time with close family or friends. We do not do things like buy or sell, except for food, as we love to go out for brunch. We like ice cream. We don't touch our email, amen. It's his words, not mine. We don't post anything on social media because our phones are off. We don't run errands or catch up around the house, and we don't talk about stuff that's heavy or sad or divisive, because there's 6 other days of the week for that. We don't talk about stuff we need to get done. We rest from even the thought of work. We don't read a magazine, a book, or anything that would make us want more, because on the Sabbath we have enough. But these rules aren't suffocating. They're not rigid. They're pliable and limber and spacious. They're not overly legalistic, but he says this gives us a framework to begin to get refreshment. I just want to ask you, what would that look like for you to do that? To just do parts of that? To perhaps honor this system? In fact, one of our next steps this week, I want to encourage you to make a list of things that really bring life to you. What fills your cup? And then make a list of the things that drain you. What would it look like to make sure on that day of replenishment that you don't do the things that drain you? In fact, I want to invite you into this rhythm. I want to invite you to think about what would it look like to implement it. If you're married or you have a partner, man, talk about it together. All right, you got to talk about the unique nuances, competitive sports. All right, is that work or is that rejuvenating? Right, yard work, gardening, is that work or is that rejuvenating? It's probably different for each individual. Cooking, I love to cook. Most of my family hates to cook. Man, when I cook, I am like creating something, and I'm getting ready to have a feast with my family for a couple of hours. I love to cook. That's rejuvenating for me. For others, it's work. Working out, is that work or rejuvenating? You need to talk about this with the people that you live with. If you're single, all right, talk about it with some friends, other people. If you notice somebody in your life who's alone, invite them into this conversation. If you're in a group, we're going to be talking about this in our small groups this week. And see, you can blow it off if you want, but don't be surprised if you find yourself exhausted and continuing to feel the burnout. Not overly creative and your soul feeling depleted. But I'm telling you, if you want something more, I encourage you, like Paul said to Timothy, pay attention to your soul. Pay attention to your life. And when you follow Jesus in this rhythm, I'm telling you, we say it all the time, your life will be so much better. Take a free day. It's not natural. I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to work at it. You're going to have to develop it. But here's the cool thing. God actually wants to help you with it. In fact, let me pray for us toward that end. God, I just want to thank you for this picture we've got the chance to explore today. This rhythm of rejuvenation, to work hard, to play hard. And Father, in all the craziness of our culture, and it's crazy. There's so many things that are pulling us in so many directions, and we feel the exhaustion. That is legitimately so. We feel overworked, we feel overstretched. And so I just pray that you just, would you help us? Would you teach us? Would you show us what it looks like to stop, to play, to rest, to rejuvenate? Remind us that it's okay to take our hands off the wheel, and when we do that, it's actually an act of trusting you. Would you help us to pay attention to this, to pay attention to ourselves this week, to our souls? Help us to do this well, to manage ourselves well this week. And we pray these things in you, Jesus. Amen. Hey, we're gonna sing a song as we close today. It's one of my favorite songs. It's called Waymaker. And this song talks about, even when you and I say, hey, I'm going to take a day off, guess what? God is still working. He's still working. He's always working. He's always there, even when you don't see it. And so I want to go ahead and ask you to stand, and would you just make this your prayer and just perhaps see what God does if we lean into this week and say, okay, God, I'm gonna follow you in this week. Let's see what God does. I can't wait to hear the stories.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Take a moment to follow our podcast on your preferred platform, and be sure to download our app to stay informed on everything happening here at Crosspoint. And if you like what you heard today, don't hesitate to share it with a friend that might need to hear it too.